Even now, the fighting rages on in Ukraine as we approach the 2-year anniversary since the Russian military launched attacks by ground and air on eastern Ukraine. Since then, more than 100,000 troops have been killed or wounded on each side. According to the World Bank, there has been more than $600 billion in damage in Ukraine. Both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky have vowed to keep fighting until they win the war. Joining us once again on where the conflict stands 2 years in is Alexander Linoska. He's a political science professor at the University of Waterloo. Welcome back to the show. Alexander, when we first spoke about this war 2 years ago, Putin's, as he was calling it then, special military operation, it was supposed to be a weekend invasion. How much territory has actually changed hands in the last 2 years?
Thank you very much for having me back on the program. So in the spring of 2022, it did look like Russia was seizing much territory, especially closer to Kyiv and Kharkiv, as well as in the south and in the east. It had to retreat from some vectors of its ongoing military attack, but it still has retained some important territorial holdings in the south and in the east. Those territorial holdings are much more modest relative to the war aims that Russia has had. Russia aims to destroy Ukraine, to effect regime change, and to destroy Ukrainian patrimony. So even though it is making somewhat modest gains as of late, they still fall far short of what Russia seeks to accomplish in Ukraine.
How then has this prolonged conflict shaped the geopolitical position of Canada and other Western allies in Europe?
So with respect to Canada's allies, there has been a market shift. Most allies have been increasing their defense expenditures. They're much more tuned to the threat posed by Russia. Canada is a bit of an oddity. Canada is one of the few NATO countries to, in fact, announce a cut in defense spending in the last several months. Canada has not really updated its strong, secure, engaged defense white paper that was released in 2017 as promised to do so. Canada has not really increased ammunition production over 2021 levels, despite providing significant military support to Ukraine since 2022. So there's still much work to be done within Canada, especially as regards to the defense establishment.
And of course, there's that package that they're waiting for from the U.S. as well to be approved. Putin critic Alexei Navalny died last week. Putin has consistently reasserted his commitment to the goals behind this war. So how does his control over Russia now compare to at the time of the invasion almost 2 years ago?
I think even when he launched the full-scale invasion back in February 2022, his position was very secure. I think there were some questions about his standing as it became clear that the military operation was not going according to plan. But I think since 2023 especially, his position has further consolidated. There are no apparent challenges or challengers to his rule. There is no sense of who might replace him whatsoever. The Russian domestic political opposition is very weak. And so I would argue that he'll probably be president for much of the foreseeable future.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky recently dismissed the head of that country's military. And just reflecting back on the 2 years, we saw Zelensky become front and center. He was at award shows. He was here in Canada. His face and image was everywhere. He was Times Person of the Year. How has his popularity changed recently?
It has seen a decline in Ukrainian opinion surveys. Still, he has solid support, but definitely not anywhere near what he had received in 2022, in part because of how there has been mounting frustration over the Ukrainian military effort. You may recall that last year there was much hype surrounding the planned counteroffensive that Ukraine would launch in the south and the east, in part because of the receipt of large military support from the West. It has not panned out according to plan, precisely because Russia was able to dig in over the course of late 2022 and early 2023. And Zaluzhny, the commander-in-chief whom he had recently dismissed, was very popular. However, notwithstanding Zaluzhny's popularity, Zelensky has not really had to experience much domestic turmoil as a result. His standing still remains solid as ever. But again, his popularity is simply not what it used to be.
Alexander, we're going to watch all of this in context. We're heading into 3 years of this war. Russia has an election coming up next week. I am sure we will talk soon. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks again for having me.
Actually, Russia's election's coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.